The way that it stands now, Texas has 3 more seasons in the Big 12 before they enter the SEC. If everything holds, no buyouts happen, etc. So that would mean Arch finishes out his high school career this fall and then is on campus in Austin for their final 2 years in the Big 12. So at some point, if he's the starting quarterback in year 3 while there, he'd be taking them into the SEC. So I think there may have been some of this where Arch just wanted to be his own man. And you got to respect that, right? Didn't want to ride the coattails or maybe be compared to his uncles or his grandfather or whatever. So he chooses Texas. But let's face it, this is a huge question mark whether this is a smart decision from a football standpoint. Because, number one, Steve Sarkisian's the head coach at Texas, and I don't think he's on really solid footing yet. He's had 1 season there. They went 5-7 and lost to Kansas at home. So the idea that Sark, he ain't Saban, he ain't Kirby Smart, he's not a guy that you know has been there for 15 years or will be there for 15 years. A little rocky. Secondly, I mean, Texas being 5-7 last year, if they happen to be 5-7 again this year, 6-6, something like that, Arch enters a program that has been wildly mediocre for the last decade. I mean, they stopped churning out even NFL talent, which should never happen at Texas. So he walks into a situation where they're not ready-made to win. Now, this year we might see a big step forward. They're predicted to be the second-best team of the Big 12 by some publications. But that's the context of Arch going to Texas. I mean, there's major questions about Sark. There's questions about that program. And once you get to the SEC and you level up in competition, yikes. But I thought how interesting this was because Arch is the number 1 recruit in the nation. He plays quarterback, so it's the most high-profile position, and he's a Manning. It's this perfect confluence of events. If Arch was the 10th best recruit in the nation, if Arch was the 3rd best quarterback of his recruiting class, if Arch played linebacker, safety, wide receiver, what would this be? But instead, it's quarterback, number 1 kid in the class, and his last name's super famous. He's not a Johnson, he's not a Smith, he's not a Davidson, he's a Manning. So there's ripple effects here. And I thought this was super interesting. So I wrote a piece about this for CBS Sports. The 5 ripple effects of Arch Manning's commitment. Number 5, the Big 12's relevance. I mean, let's face it, outside of Oklahoma, nobody's been anything. We've been waiting for Iowa State. Last year was supposed to be the Cyclone season. Didn't happen. Been waiting on Texas. Hasn't happened. Now Oklahoma and Texas are leaving. So you bring in Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, BYU. Okay. But in terms of the Big 12's footprint, it's been way down because Texas has been way down. It's been Oklahoma, nobody else. Okie State to a certain degree. The Big 12's television package, not very good. They could really use this. And they're going to have Arch there again for perhaps 2 years. And so every time Arch is under center, we'll see if he starts his freshman year or sophomore year, what have you. But every time he's under center, it's going to be must-watch TV. Texas against anybody, it's Arch Manning. So that's pretty huge. And they, again, will likely have Arch for 2 years, 23 and 24. So that helps bridge the gap. Now, I thought it's been great to get those other 4 schools in. It's helped stabilize them, provide some depth. Those are good schools. Cincinnati into the playoff last year. Houston, it could unlock major recruiting advantages they've never had by being in a Power 5 conference. BYU is a big national brand. They're very good. UCF could grow into a potential, I don't want to call it powerhouse, but a really good program as well. So they did well to recoup. But when you lose Texas and Oklahoma, Having Arch there for 2 years before you've got a bridge to post OU in Texas, he's a good guy to do that. Number 4, between Peyton and Eli, there's only one SEC championship ever. Peyton Manning won the lone SEC title between the two brothers in 1997, his last year there in Knoxville. Can Arch Manning match Peyton's one conference championship? Can he win a Big 12? That's first up. Then can he win the SEC? Much harder. But kind of interesting that between the greatness of the brothers, Eli's Ole Miss teams were never good enough to be an SEC champ. They never even played in the SEC title game. And for Peyton, they only won once. Can Arch get you to a conference championship game and win it? The number 3 ripple effect is A&M. Jimbo makes a lot of money. Jimbo is supposed to lead the A&M Aggies to playoffs, to national championship games, and he hasn't done so. He's had one season that was an elite season, which was the COVID season when they went 9-1, and they finished number 4 in the AP. But they haven't had the breakthrough full year to get to a playoff and to compete for a national championship. And if Arch is stealing shine in the Longhorn State, if you're talking about Texas, which has been down for so long, allowing the Aggies to rise up, become more prominent in that state in some ways, become more relevant from a football standpoint in many ways, if Arch brings the Longhorns back and suddenly Jimbo lost his window, that'd be crushing. That'd be killer. I mean, again, you pay Jimbo Fisher $100 million because he's going to bring A&M to playoffs. He's going to control the state. He's going to bring A&M to a place they haven't been in that state because it's always been a Texas state. And that window's closing. Now, Texas, again, might be mediocre for a while. Maybe mediocre once they get to the SEC. But you've got Arch coming into the program. He becomes must-watch. He becomes a Heisman candidate. He becomes the guy that everybody in the state is talking about. You missed your window. So the heat lamp is on, especially if Arch makes the Longhorns a winner. The heat lamp is on Jimbo to deliver more than just sniping and griping at Nick Saban. Number 2 ripple effect in Arch Manning going to UT, that SEC deal. I want you to just pause and think about this number. ESPN ABC is going to take over the SEC rights after CBS has them in 2 years. So it's always been the SEC on CBS, that 3:30 Eastern window, Saturday afternoons, the best. They get the number 1 pick. Whatever the number 1 game is, CBS gets to pick it. That ain't going to happen moving forward. ESPN ABC has that, and so those games will be on ABC instead. It was a 10-year, $300 million deal. $300 million per season to the SEC. Meaning Disney, which owns ESPN and ABC, paid $3 billion for a decade of SEC football. $3 billion. Well, Alabama, Auburn is great. World's largest outdoor cocktail party is awesome. Alabama, Georgia, the SEC championship games. LSU, Alabama. These are all great matchups. You add Arch Manning into the mix, and Arch versus Alabama, Arch versus LSU, Arch versus Georgia, and also Texas, Oklahoma, the Red River rivalry now with Arch Manning under center. That's a big freaking deal. And so this deal happened before Texas announced it was going to the SEC, although who knows if those machinations or those wheels were already in motion where Oklahoma and Texas had told powers that be, we're planning on making this move. Who knows? But you pay $3 billion for football. Now knowing that Texas becomes must-watch almost every week, that's a nice little addition to the huge TV deal. And finally, the biggest ripple effect on all of this of Arch committing to Texas, and again, all of this is based on him staying committed to Texas, but no reason to believe otherwise. That family has steered this to be as quiet a recruitment as possible for somebody of his stature, of his notoriety. He doesn't have social media, doesn't have Twitter, announced this via a brand new account, and it was just kind of a graphic, and I'm going to Texas. So he has not courted attention, been pretty under the radar for them. I don't think he's just going to pull out and go somewhere else, Now, does he finish his whole career there? Who knows? Transfer portal and all that. But Steve Sarkisian's job security went through the roof with this decision because he went 5-7 last year. Let's just say he goes 6-6 this season. Also ran afterthought in the Big 12 yet again, has a bad loss here or there. There would definitely be some rumblings of, Sark needs to go. We can't be 6-6, 5-7. He can recruit, but he can't coach, so get him out. Certainly another bad season. Look, you lose to Kansas again, but you can't fire Sark this season. Can't. Because Arch committed to Sark. So, really, unless Arch told you to fire Sark because it's so bad, you have to keep him no matter what. He can lose every game on the schedule this year. You can't fire Sarkisian because he's got Arch Manning coming next season. He's the key. He brings Arch Manning onto your campus. And that could be Heisman's. It certainly is notoriety, certainly helps your donations, certainly helps bring your program to the next level. So I know it's putting a lot in a high school senior because who knows what he'll be in college, but this is the type of notoriety and assessment, that scouts have, that he's every bit as good as Peyton, every bit as good as Eli, every bit as good as those guys who are program-defining type of quarterbacks. But you can't fire Sark now. And I would argue if you can't fire Sark this season, 2022, no matter how bad it is, you probably can't fire Sark after Arch's first season on campus either, because is Arch going to want a new coach in year 2 of him on campus? Probably not. So by this sheer commitment, Sark, who's anything but a guarantee, Sark, who has got massive questions about coaching, win-loss records. The guy's never coached in a conference championship game. He's coached in Washington, USC, and Texas. He's never even got to a league title game. Massive questions about whether Sark is actually a good coach or not. The ultimate job security, at least for 1 or 2 more seasons.